Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Latino Vote podcast. I'm Chuck Rocha, and this week, Mike Madrid has decided to take the week off, and I could pick anybody that I wanted to be on the podcast. So I was thinking to myself, who do I know that could represent the Mike Madrid overeducated Mexican scenario? I could not find a Republican to do that. So I thought of the most educated Mexican that I know, who's the opposite of me in many ways. Welcome to the podcast, my brother, Kristian Ramos.
Kristian Ramos. It's with
in East Texas. You're lucky I didn't toss you Jesus Christ.
Fair enough. Kristian Ramos here. Really glad to be on the podcast. That was a good.
Have you ever listened to the podcast before, Kristian?
Cristian Anselmo David Ramos de la Vega Esquire III has listened.
Good. This is where the magic happens, and we get to talk about all things Latino politics. And if there's one person that loves to talk about Latinos, focus groups, what's going on, is Kristian Ramos, my brother. And again, with all sincerity, thanks for being on, Kristian. Tell me what's going on in your life this morning. Tell me what's been happening in the Ramos household today.
So actually, I am going to tell you a story about my life today, because I think it will give you a window into how I view the Latino vote. And that is that my daughter, for some reason, we have her in a art class that starts at 10 o'clock and ends at 1:30, which is literally the worst possible summer schedule there is. And the reason I bring that up is because I think that's most people's existence is, picking up their kids, taking them from one place to the other, dealing with their mortgages, dealing with their car issues or whatever. And they're probably not thinking about politics that much. And so for me, I always try to look at the Latino vote through that lens of a family, of people who are trying to get by, to make it through the week, right? You can be very successful and still just trying to get through the week. So I that is a perspective I take on the Latino vote and voters in general.
So I think that's a great point. And today, me and Mr. Ramos are working on a project specifically about trying to reach Latino men. But before we dig into what we're trying to do and talk about this problem that me and Mike Madrid talk about all the time, which are these Latino men who are underperforming Latinas by a big margin in most of the races that I'm working in. Kristian, I think it's really important for folks. I've known you. I was thinking this morning before we did the podcast, I've known you at least 14 years. Maybe it's been longer. And I remember when Kristian was running around DC and he was working for different nonprofits and groups. Now he owns his own firm. He's one of these entrepreneurs who me and Mike Madrid talk about, of Latinos, Latinas who are starting their own businesses in politics and communications and public policy. And so most folks will see Kristian quoted in lots of newspapers. They probably see him on TV, on CBS or CNN or one of the places that he makes his appearances. But take us a step back, Kristian. I think folks on the podcast who listen to our podcast that are as big as nerds as me and you are, they probably don't know the story. I know you grew up in Arizona, working class background, but tell us how you go from this kid growing up in Arizona to getting to see you on TV every week.
You know what is so funny about this conversation? I hadn't thought about it in a long time, because this is just, my day-to-day life.
This is what we do here. I'm going to make you cry. Go.
No, but I think what's amazing about it is there's three things. One, I was completely apolitical growing up. Like, I wanted to be a writer. I was a Democrat, and I was vaguely aware of politics, but I never made like this big decision for the love of politics to get into politics. I wanted to be a writer. And I kind of fell into all of this by accident. And the reason that I was never really into politics is because I never really thought it was for me as a Mexican American growing up in Arizona. I didn't really think politicians gave a shit about me or my family. And it's a weird thing to say now, given what I do, but my mother was very into activism, and she was very very much about helping the Latino community, and she really pushed me that way. But my broader family, I never saw them represented in politics. I never saw them in this process, and so at every step of my career, that was only reinforced. In the rooms that I was in, and years later, somebody told me something that was really profound, but at the time I thought it was stupid because I was younger. But he said, the thing for the Latino community is they really want to see themselves in the picture. And I thought, well, yes, of course, everyone wants to see themselves in the picture. But when I look back and I reflect on your question, Chuck, I think it's doubly true for Latinos. I think we're just not out there. I don't think, like, growing up, there was nobody. There was no Chuck Rocha on TV. You know what I mean? There was, I guess, Henry Cisneros, and that was probably it on the, the political folks in our time. And so now you got the Chuck Rochas, you got the Maria Cardonas, you got the Maria Teresa Camars, you've got your Ben Ray Lujans, you've got your Ruben Gallegos, you've got your Sonia Sotomayors, and that's different now. And I think that probably makes all the difference in the world, but we're still not where we need to be. And I think for me, that's really, I'm pretty shameless about putting my stuff out into the world when I'm on TV or when I'm quoted. But I do think of somebody like myself growing up, like, people need to see that this stuff exists out there.
How did you make that jump, though? What was the entry point into politics or nonprofits, or where did you enter? How did you get into the system?
It was a girl.
Here, now we're getting somewhere. This is what the podcast is about. We just Andreas, turn off all the filters. Now go, Kristian.
No, I was in college. I was dating somebody who was older than me, and she was going to graduate, and go to a different school for her master's. And she always did internships during the summers. And I followed her out because it was our last summer together. And I got a really cool job, and I ended up staying. They were like, we'll give you a job. And I think I was like a sophomore in college. I ended up transferring schools because I just felt like again, like, politics is not for me. And here's this, like, career. Here's a thing that I can do. And I just went for it. And I've been in DC for like 20 years now. But yeah, like I said, 100% came out here, had no idea what anything was, couldn't tell you about, Senate, House, and nothing. And then, yeah, I just was very lucky to have somebody who believed in me, that worked at the place that I ended up. And I got a job, and I've been here ever since.
Was that person that believed in you a white man?
No, but I will. That person who believed in me was a Republican.
Really? Here we go. Mike Madrid's going to love this. Go ahead.
The guy's name is Alberto Sapanta. And I think he had worked for in the White House for, I want to say, Ford, but he had just always been around. He's a board member. He was a board member at CHC. I don't know if he is anymore, but yeah, he vouched for me. He got me a job, and like, he just was there. Very completely accidentally. Somebody in Arizona who was a mentor of mine knew him, and the guy vouched for me. We had coffee once. And it's funny about DC because you never think that coffees are that consequential. And then only, like, again, 20 years later, you're like, holy shit, that changed my life. And so, Al's a good guy.
So that's interesting. I love telling these stories so that the young folks that are listening, a lot of college students, know that it could be that coffee you have. It could be that meeting you have, that, there are so many places in my life. If one thing didn't happen, I wouldn't be here today. So let's jump forward. And I think it's important for folks to understand what you do today.
Yeah, sure. So I do strategic communications, earned media. I do a lot of narrative work. And it's interesting, juxtaposing, what I do today, what I did before.
Juxta what? Posing? Here's Mike
compare
Madrid. Only 3 syllables is all you can give at one point. Mike knows the rules. Don't break our rules. I don't like these big words. Go ahead.
comparing. Because
Yeah, we got
when
somewhere.
I was growing up, I was way, way, way into music. I was way, way into comic books. I was way, way into movies. And
Nerd. Sorry,
yeah, I
my
was a
bad.
nerd. Yeah, 100% was a nerd. I was an English major, right? I was very into Shakespeare and uh, Dostoevsky, and I feel like what I do now is I try to tell stories, and I try to tell stories that are rooted in people's realities. And I feel like so much of politics today is not rooted in people's reality. I think it's really fascinating to me because I think, there's the good and the bad in everybody's life. But I think in our political discourse and in the content that we make, it's this weird like other realm where either everything is terrible or everything is awesome. And I feel like there's not a lot of, well, reality in this content. And so that's what I try to help people remain within people's lived experiences, and not look down on people that they're trying to reach, which I think happens a lot. I don't think a fascinating thing, a critique I would make of Democrats, when people are going through a hard time, they don't want sad shit. They want happy. They want to be inspired. They want to feel better. They don't want to feel like their reality is necessarily being reflected back to them. And I think that's especially true of Latino men. Latino men, they want to feel like they're the masters of their destiny, that they are going to be able to work their way out of whatever problems they may have. And I think we give people those tools to do that, to build businesses, to create jobs, to do all of those things. The way we talk about it is not great.
And I think that's one of the reasons that when Mike told me he couldn't make it this week and I could just pick somebody to be on, that I wanted you to be on, because I wanted to talk about this Latino men work we're doing. And the reason, there's a lot of men that I know in my life. Most of the women in my life would know I know a lot more men and hang out with them more than women. But the reason that I wanted you on, Kristian, is that you're at a different place in your life as a Latino man than I am. And I'm not going to say that's because you are a lot younger than me, but you are. People know, and on this podcast, I talk about my son that's 34 years old. How old are you, Kristian?
40.
You're 40.
41.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I know that Kristian has a beautiful wife. I know he has an even more beautiful daughter. And I know he lives for his family. Not that I don't, but now I have twin grandkids and I'm at a different place. So when we talk about how do we reach these men, we have to talk about all of these men. And there's men here that are not represented, who are in their 20s, who me and Kristian have been at different points in our lives, who don't have kids, who are trying to figure it out, who are probably more transient like we were. They don't own a home and they're trying to figure it out, right? These are the people that we're losing as Democrats now. And we want to have a conversation on how do we get them back, because I feel like in focus groups that I do, and one of the things that Kristian does is a lot of focus groups and a lot of polling, and he sees a lot of numbers like Mike does, is, how do we get them back? Why have we been losing them? And what does that formula look like? Because are they, again, me and Mike have this debate all the time. People aren't rushing to the Republican Party in droves, but there's no doubt we have lost some support in the Latino vote. And a lot of that is due to, most of that, we talk about that here as well, are men. Kristian, what do you think about all of that?
I have many answers for you here, but I'm going to start with an important generational thing that you're getting at. And at some point I want to write about this. So please bear with me.
Don't you worry.
But what I think is interesting about what you're saying is, I'm going to take myself as an example. Really, my real entry point into politics, where I really started paying attention, was Barack Obama. And I think around those times I was either late 20s, early 30s. I'm terrible at math, but that's my guess. Went through, all the way up to 2012 to 2016. 2016 is when I got married in 2014. My daughter was actually born. I found out my wife was pregnant the day Donald Trump won.
Shut up.
Yeah, I found that out. And to your point, as a geriatric millennial, not too long after that, I bought a house and I moved to the suburbs.
Did you call yourself a what?
A geriatric millennial is somebody
Nice.
somebody who's like 81, 82 is considered geriatric millennial.
I like it.
So I am now in the suburbs with like a newborn child, a mortgage, car, all of that, things that I really was not terribly excited. The mortgage part and owning a house, it's a lot of responsibility. I loved my daughter always. But to your point, my perspective had changed. And suddenly what I really cared about was who's going to lower my mortgage rates? Who's going to help me buy a second car? Who's going to help me get my kid into the best fucking school possible? Those were the things that I suddenly became very focused on. And you know who I never heard about any of those things from? Democrats. Democrats never talk about these things.
God, Mike Madrid's going to love this so much. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's the fucking truth. I mean,
I know, brother.
It drives me insane because, as you and I both know, Democrats save the economy. They're the ones who fix the subprime mortgages. They're the ones who have done all this stuff. But you would never know it because of the stuff that we actually talk about. And so for me, I'm like, look, I started my activist career, I guess if you want to say, in the immigrant rights movement. And I still feel very passionately about that. We should pass comprehensive immigration reform. But in the meantime, let's pass some mortgage, relief or something. You know what I mean? So that to me is what I think we are sort of like Democrats are in a weird place. Because what I see in focus groups is I don't think that the Democratic Party cares about me in my day-to-day life. If I was, go ahead.
What do they say about Republicans?
Well, they think Republicans have lost their minds. They think that they are off the reservation. But this is where I think it's fascinating. They do think that Republicans will do anything in their power to achieve their goals. And they see their goals as, lowering your taxes, all of this kitchen table stuff. And so to me, it's very clear that Latino men, like I'll give you an example. My father is in Arizona and he's always says to me, son, we got to rebuild manufacturing in the United States. We got to do it. I don't know why I haven't done that yet. And I'm just like, Dad, Joe Biden is rebuilding manufacturing in the United States. There is the CHIPS Act, which is literally bringing factories back so we can build car key chips here and be competitive. Phoenix just got a Dell factory, right? Creating millions of jobs. My father, who lives in Tucson, Arizona, right? Like 2 hours away from Phoenix, no idea. And so this is just where I'm like, I don't think it's a mystery with Latino men, right? My grandfather was a construction worker. He prided himself to going to work with a broken arm. You know what I mean? That's the kind of like toughness and the grit that he exemplified for our family. His motto was animo, which is like never give up, right? It's like a very, I guess, Texican sort of thing. But we are rebuilding manufacturing. We are rebuilding roads, bridges, the construction industry. And then I think, look, we're also doing aspirational positive things by giving people the tools to create small businesses. This administration has given more money to Black and Latino small business owners than any before. And they are creating record numbers of small businesses. Do those people who are starting these new small businesses realize that it was Joe Biden and Democrats who did that?
Well, you've done the focus groups. What do they say?
No, they have no idea. And in fact, some of these folks will literally say, thank God the Republicans are there fighting for this stuff. When they voted against the infrastructure, well, some of them voted against the infrastructure bill. Some of them voted against the CHIPS Act. Some of them voted against a lot of these things that they take credit for in these districts. So to me, this is just, again, I feel like low-hanging fruit to reach these folks and talk about these things that really matter to them in their day-to-day lives.
What do you see out there, and why do you think you have seen some movement especially with Latino men. I think you have outline a great story about Congress, things that are passed, good things that have happened that Democrats have done, why they don't get credit for it. Is there things that you've seen in the polling and focus groups that you've been running with your clients that say why Donald Trump is so appealing, especially to Latino men? Here we go.
I'm going to take this in a couple of different ways. One, the thing that is always fascinating to me about people who are shocked that there are some Latino men who like Trump is that I would be willing to bet that every Latino person out there probably has an aunt or an uncle or somebody who is low-key racist. Who's low-key, who's not politically correct, who's however you want to put it. Like everybody knows somebody in their family like that, which, okay, that's the Trump voter right there. And the way that I put it from like, I guess, a bit more of an academic point, and this is not my line, this is Fernand Amandi's line. I'll give it to him. If they were to put up Satan himself, Republicans, they would get 30 to 35% of the Latino vote. That's their, their bedrock level. It doesn't matter who they put up. And so, yeah, he has an audience. There's a constituency. It's always been around 30-35% of Latinos have been conservative. So that's one piece. And then the second piece is, I don't know if you've ever watched Fox. I used to go on Fox a lot. But if you ever watch an interview that Trump does on Fox or any of these stations, they'll be like, Donald Trump, you've just been found guilty on 34 counts of blah, blah, blah. And you've been found guilty for libel, for sexual assault. And you led an attack on January 6th. What do you have to say about that? Donald Trump will say, all I know is that when I was president, the economy was really good and I created lots of jobs. And I've created so many jobs for the Blacks and the Latinos. And it was really, the jobs are incredible. And I'm the best, economic president ever. They ask the same, like another question, and he answers exactly the same way. That guy never stops talking about how good he is for the economy. Our side, we're like, is the economy good? I don't know if it's good. It's kind of okay for some people, I guess. And like, I don't know. How do you feel?
I think what you bring up is a good point. And I think that I'm not pushing back on either one because I think they both have truth in them. And I think we all know those people in our families. And I think that what you said about the economy is right. I think that leads into what me and you have been talking about with a group of men. And to let you folks who are listening in is me and Kristian have brought together a diverse group of men, Latino men, to talk about the Latino men vote. And is there things that we could do with our own personal experience to try to get messages to those men about what Biden has done for them, what the differences between the parties are, talk to them about issues that they actually care about. And, every day, and I give Mike credit, and I talk about Mike a lot when he's not here, but I talk about him when he is here. Mike has always said to me is what made me different wasn't that as an operative, I was a Latino, but that I never went to college, that I grew up on a farm. I went to work in a factory when I was 19, and I had a kid when I was a kid. And so I've lived that life, and it makes me look at politics through a lens much differently than lots of my other consultant friends. And I always talk about well-meaning white consultants. I don't tweet about it as much as I used to, but you know what I mean, is that there's very few of folks who look like me and Mike Madrid, or Kristian Ramos, or you can name all the other people that we've name dropped on here, especially a lot of Latinas, in the room making the decision. Now, I am in the room now in lots of decisions. Kristian is in the room. Mike Madrid just wrote a great book called The Latino Century, talking about like what we've all been through and trying to do this work. So what I wanted to think about, and we talk about with Kristian, is that I think that us controlling a narrative to a specific small group of persuadable men voters in a state like Pennsylvania could be something that could be beneficial to lots of folks. Because if you're taking a non-college educated Latino man who is most of the problem in the electorate, that's me. Also, if you think about men that are 40 who just have a small kid and have a wife and live out in the suburbs, I'm talking to him now on this podcast. If you talk about a kid that's in his early 30s, who's got a couple kids, who's single, who's trying to figure out how to make it, that's my son in Pittsburgh. So all of these different experiences are what I want to bring together to go out and have some specific conversations with these men that's probably not centered around women's reproductive rights. It may not be centered around the CHIPS Act. It may be centered around some other issue that's really about what we hear in focus groups every day about what are you doing, to Kristian's point. I think that was brilliant because we hear it. It's as basic as, okay, tell me what you're going to do to help me right now. I don't care what party you belong to, right, Kristian?
Yeah, no, I think you're raising a really good point, because what I see is people will be like, yes, Trump is crazy. Yes, he led January 6th. Yes, he's a threat to our democracy. But eggs were cheaper when he was president. But I didn't have to worry about inflation. And the thing that kills me about this is Donald Trump's actions when he was president created the conditions for the inflation to take hold the way it did, right? This guy badly fucked up his COVID response. If he had been responsible, if he had just taken the plan out from the desk, the basic plan, and initiated that, our economy probably would not have been decimated the way it was by if he took COVID seriously. That's one. Two, his tax cuts for billionaires and the super rich. I mean, this is a guy who literally says, paying taxes is for suckers, right? Like, again, this is not a friend to the working man, but, for Democrats, we don't seem authentic on the issue, so we can't challenge him on this because of the way that he talks about these things. And so I just feel like, maybe there's some reflection for us.
I like the pushback. I want to push back. I think that anytime, not on you, I'm not pushing back on you. I think that anytime that Democrats are being tough, pushing back, being loud, owning successes, is something that Latino men in particular want to see. If anything in my 55 years of being on this earth has proven to me, 55 years, most of that being single. We all know I'm marrying beautiful Ebony Payne in 35 days. Kristian may or may not be at my wedding. Like, there's a reason why I've been single. Is I haven't been the best understanding of the female race. But there's one thing I do know is that there's a difference between men and women. You should read this in the Bible, whatever you want to do, but there is a difference. And when it comes to politics, when we have to run a TV ad or a digital ad, we don't separate those two things out. We say there are persuadable voters that we must go reach in this particular area, and let's go talk to them. And rarely do we distinguish between the messages. If that poll had told us that it is women's reproductive rights, or if it's somebody is, helping the rig system by taking all these corporate donations and helping corporations and not people, whatever the thing is, make it up. I don't care. But what I'm getting at there is it's become so nuanced. We talk about Latino voters, not Latino vote, because there's so many different sections and groups. Sure, we can break down ethnically around Cubans and Puerto Ricans and Mexicans. I get it, and we should. But we can go deeper on lots of different other ways. One is age, the difference between me and my son and his sons, and how we look at the world. The same way that me and Kristian look at the world differently, just on where we are in our economics of us being, me being 16 years older than him, my kids being grown. But then when we go to messaging Latino voters, who, keep in mind, me and Mike talk about this, are younger, the biggest growing population are second and third generation. 40% of Latino voters will be new voters since 2016. Like, all of this crazy stuff makes it super hard to reach Latino voters, hence why we've become such a centerpiece of what it's going to take to win. But a big part of that, and we talked about this, I think, in the last episode that was live from Naleo, which is that our women, our Latinas, are saving our ass, or it would be more like 55-45. It would be a lot worse than it is because they are overperforming. They are holding up the Latino vote, quote unquote, as it is. So I want to spend some time over the rest of this cycle and the next cycle of putting men together to figure out how you go talk to those men about issues that men care about, not seeding anything with women. Like, I'm not saying anything at all derogatory, all the others about the messaging or we shouldn't care about women. I'm just saying, bottom line is men are a bunch of dumbasses, and we're going to spend a lot more time to go figure out how we get dumbasses like me 20 years ago to go vote.
Well, so no, but you're hitting on something that's really important, and I'm going to agree with you, Chuck. I'm going to lean in here.
Here we go. Now, let me record this. Andres, turn that up so we can record it live. Thank you, brother.
No, but I think when we are trying to slice and dice up the Latino electorate, a lot of times we're sacrificing like stories and feelings and things like that. And I think so. I actually really don't like this about the modern Democratic Party, which is they want to slice and dice things into oblivion, and they have to have like a very specific message to this very small subset of this voter file, whatever. And I just feel like, I need fucking Jurassic Park, man. I need to see a dinosaur and people are just blown away. It's a beautiful dinosaur. That's what you need in an ad. That's what you need in a message. It is so simple that anyone can understand how good it is. But when we get into these really granular minutiae arguments, it's just we lose the story, man. And I'll give you a good example of this. For Latino Men, I am certain that 5 years from now, historians are going to say Joe Biden saved the country. He saved the country from a pandemic. He saved the country from the extremism of MAGA, to be determined, but hopefully he does. And then he also brought millions of jobs back and helped people provide for their families and their communities. That's a very simple story. It's also true. That is what has happened in the last 3 years. I don't know why we are telling that story to Latino men. We've literally given people the tools to rebuild our streets, our homes, our bridges,
our environment,
our fucking environment. We have given people the ability to do those things. That's very simple. And I think that would do well with men. They are very patriotic people.
Yet, and I think this is like the final line on this piece is, even though all the things that Kristian has said is true, you still see the underperformance. You still see the slippage in the numbers. You still see men underperforming, showing that work needs to be done, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, because we're not doing it. We're not reaching them. Like, this is I think, I don't know, maybe I'll get in trouble for saying this, but I feel like sometimes there's a stigma attached to this thing. And it's tough because I do this work for my family in Texas. I'm sure they wouldn't think so, but I do try, like, everything that I create, everything I do, I want, my cousin in El Paso to look at that and think, oh, that's funny, or oh, that's cool, or whatever. Like, it's something that they would enjoy. Because I remember being a kid and thinking politics isn't for me, and I think politics should be for everybody. And I think, like, I'm not sure that our political class views that thinks that politics should be for everybody. I think that some people think, well, it should be this subsection of this cross section of the turnout voter of this district and here. That I'm like, I don't know, man. If it's a good story, it's a good story. It fucking works for anybody, right? Regardless of where they are. And that's the stuff that we just don't think about. I don't.
Well, if I'm playing to Mike Madrid here and we talk about this on the podcast, Mike talks about a historic realignment. And what he means by that, and you can't argue with him on this point, is that there's more educated voters voting Democrat. And to your point, I think you're the point you were making, more folks that look like me growing up, who never went to college, who may not be the most educated and who talk funny, are leaving the party at a quicker rate. And moving to the Republican Party. The overlapping part of that, what it has to do with Latino voters, is we just happen to be the biggest part of that growth at that non-college educated, because we're coming of age so much quicker. So that's the bleeding I want to stop, is when I stand up and Mike tries, and we did this last week with Millennial, where he talks about how these non-college educated realignment, going to Republicans. This is why it's happening. I stand up and go, I never went to college. I had a kid when I was 19. I got a criminal record and I can't find Germany on a map. Everybody laughs, ha, ha, ha. And that's all true, but I love Joe Biden. So there's got to be other people like me. Now, I've been part of the process and I've run campaigns and I understand the difference, Kristian, and all the things that you know that you're saying. I know Joe Biden did, hence why I'm a big fan. But let's be clear, I ran a primary against him for Bernie Sanders. But it don't mean I don't think that Joe Biden is not a good president. I think he's a great president. I think he's done an amazing thing, especially around the environment. You know, I was telling Kristian when we got on here that I just got back from a board luncheon with the National Wildlife Federation. I am on their board because I care immensely about animals and about habitat and about ecosystems and protecting, you know, animals. And, you know, Kristian would make fun of me and say that's because I like to go fishing all over the world. And it's true as well. But protecting that ecosystem means that there'll be fish for my son to catch at some point. And so like, these are little things that make me like a unicorn. It's just different, right? But there's got to be other folks, if we go talk to them about the differences, to keep them from voting for Donald Trump, which I know Mike agrees with, right? But this realignment is what I think is not that you have to stop it, but I think that there's truth in that. But I also think that there's ways that that will stop, at least with Latino, especially with Latino men, if done correctly. Jump in there.
No, I don't. I'm not. I'm selling on the realignment piece, right? I'm going to sell on that. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but this is what I think is. I actually don't think this is a Latino problem. I think this is a, like, Democrats are bad at talking about the stuff they do to help people in a way that, like, is resonant in any way. That to me is the bigger problem. And then I think you could probably overlay all of the stuff that you're talking about, Chuck, in there. But I think if you solve that first problem, right? If we made more Jurassic Parks and less Schindler's Lists, we would be good, right? Like, people like Schindler's List. It's a good movie. I've seen it. It was really fucking depressing. Some people want Jurassic Park. Some people want to go and get scared by a dinosaur and you know, feel amazed at that. And I think that's the bigger problem in my mind. And it's interesting because people always say Donald Trump, oh, he's so negative, he's so dark. Donald Trump is a ray of sunshine to his MAGA audience. To those people, he is, like, optimistic, he is positive, he's everything that they want in a candidate. We do the opposite to our base. We are, like, constantly telling them, no, you guys, that's not right. That's not true. Or you can't say, you know, and it's just like, maybe we should be nicer to our base and to the people who vote for us.
I like the dinosaur analogy. And I think a lot of this, to wrap all of this up and to bring it back home, is that the information is spread now over so many channels and everything is so disconnected than what it was 20 years ago. And 50 years ago, forget about it. It was only 3 channels. It was easy to advertise, do your thing. Now it's just harder to reach that voter. And then if your average age is 27, people in your family are consuming information in 2 different languages. Many of your households are multi-generational. It becomes that much more complex to try to reach that voter and tell them something Joe Biden did for them that was good when they see a carnival barker who's just everybody knows.
But this is actually really, really, really important what you're saying. Because, you know, increasingly in my day job, I'm, you know, it used to be 1 minute, then it was 30 seconds, and now it's 15-second ads. To tell a story, in a compelling story, in 15 seconds is really fucking hard. And to do it well, it really is, you're breaking it down to the core of the narrative, right? You're breaking it down to some very simple things, which I don't know that the Democrats really want to do that, like try to do that. I just like.
I think you've kind of summed up how to do a 15-second positive ad is you put a big dinosaur on it with a big thing painted on the sides of it, jobs here. Yeah. And then boom, done.
Don't forget Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. The name of the dinosaur was Joe Biden. It's right on his forehead. So before we get out of here, Kristian, I want to ask you one question that I like to ask guests when we have them on. And me and Mike don't have a lot of guests on these days because we like to hear each other talk. And that goes for me and Mike both equally. There's a lot of young brown professionals that we have on. We've had a lot of reporter friends that are mine and your friends, and other folks that work in different things. For folks that are listening to the podcast, who is that kid that you were going to college, whether you're following a girl, following a boy, going on a whatever you're doing, a Hiawatha retreat, I don't give a damn. But what's something you would have told yourself 20 years ago that you know now, that you wish you knew back then, that you would give advice to a young person now, especially a young Latina growing up in a working class family who may not think that, public policy or politics or any of this shit matters to them? And what would you say to them as your, some advice?
So I'm going to bring out a prop here. I don't know if you can see this.
You got to describe it for our listeners.
This is the anger guy from Inside Out. And I have the anxiety one here somewhere. My daughter got them. And I'm lifting this up and sharing it from Inside Out too, because I wish I enjoyed this stuff more. I have done some cool things in my professional career. I don't know that I've always enjoyed it. I don't know that I've always embraced the joy of it. And I hope that whatever it is you're doing, you find joy in it, because politics you can make it in politics, you can make it in anything. It is hard. It is hard. It is hard. It is hard. And if you don't treat yourself right, if you don't take joy in your life, nobody will. And I struggle with that. I really, really struggle with that. And I've been very successful, as Chuck was saying. So just find the joy in it.
I will thank you, Kristian, for being with us this week. I would also add to that a expression that Cory Booker coined that says, don't let people steal your joy. I think there's a lot of people out there that look to try to bring you down, and there's nothing Latinos like to do better when they see another Latino advancing is to pull them back down to where they are. Don't let people steal your joy. Don't let people live in your head, and get out there and make your own way. Wherever Mike Madrid is this week, he's probably in the south of France trying to sell one of them books to somebody again, or he's traveling the world. Don't forget to buy The Latino Century. I like to give my brother a hard time. But until next week, you need to tune into the Latino Vote podcast. You need to like us. You need to share us with all of your friends. Next week, I'll be gone. I am taking a trip down to Mexico to do some of that fishing we like to talk about. And Mike Madrid will be here with his special guest. Stay tuned, and thank you. And until next week, go get them.